The complete collapse of Hunter Biden's expected plea deal comes exactly 1 week after 2 IRS agents blew the whistle before Congress on the investigation into Hunter Biden. Attorney for IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley, Mark Lytle, joins me. Nice to see you, Mark.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I wanted you here not just because you're his lawyer, but because of your experience, because you've been a prosecutor prosecuting tax cases.
I've been at the tax division. I practice criminal enforcement of the tax division, and I was the chief of our financial crimes and public corruption unit in the Eastern District of Virginia.
Okay. I know how when a client has a problem, like a tax problem, you guys somehow managed to come up with like 50 crimes. I mean, it was against my colleagues. Hunter Biden was offered 2 misdemeanors for those offenses. How many charges could he have faced, hypothetically, do you think?
I mean, there's a number of things that came up during the congressional testimony that could include campaign finance, money laundering, FARA, the tax felonies, tax evasion, false tax returns. There was a lot. There's a lot of conduct there. And it really just shocked the conscience of folks to see that there was 2 misdemeanor pleas.
Well, see, I think that's the thing people don't understand is that 2 misdemeanors. There's one thing if you've just got two counts of failure to file. Those are misdemeanors, typically misdemeanors. Yes. But when you have a tax, and when you go deep into this, is that all the charges he didn't get charged with is what would possibly and reasonably and what is sort of common.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you've got over, I think, $2 million with the testimony, over $2 million in unpaid income to the taxes. And really, the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony is the existence of a lie or lies. And the record's replete with lies here on the tax returns and in the tax income, preparing the tax returns and interactions with the CPA. I mean, it's clearly broad conduct of tax evasion.
And why do you think that they didn't charge him with tax evasion and those other companion charges that, I mean, you say there's evidence, like there may be evidence to charge, it may not be enough to convict him, but typically prosecutors will hit you over the head with every possible thing to charge you with. But I mean, why didn't they seek charges on those? Because there does seem like there's so many of them they could have. Maybe not guilty, but could have.
Well, it's hard to, jump into the mind of the prosecutors, particularly, no one's really noted, the prosecutors who appeared in court today. They're not the prosecutors who handled the investigation over the past 5 years. Nobody's really reported on that. They're brand new names.
Well, who are these people?
So one is a prosecutor who's an assistant U.S. attorney in Delaware. If you look on LinkedIn, he's been there for about 5 months. The other 2 prosecutors are on loan from the Baltimore U.S. Attorney's Office. So Leslie Wolf, the long-running AUSA, who you heard a lot about from the whistleblowers, who was narrowing the investigative steps that they could take and taking all kinds of actions. The tax division attorneys that were on the case, they're nowhere to be found right now.
So who's the wizard behind the curtain who's pulling the strings on this, who's making it so it's just 2 misdemeanors, and that there's a whole menu of possible crimes from all the things you laid out, that those weren't charged?
So this is where the problem is. The Department of Justice isn't revealing that. I mean, you have the Attorney General saying that U.S. Attorney Weiss has complete authority to make the decisions. You have U.S. Attorney Weiss telling the agents that he's not the decision maker. And so you really have a situation where the Department of Justice has some explaining to do. And really at this stage, with different prosecutors who come on at the last minute, cut a plea deal that's a sweetheart deal, and then it collapses. Really, this is a state of wreck. This is really a wreck.
I mean, they always talk about how the prosecutor was appointed, the U.S. attorney, by President Trump. Indeed, he was. But I think sort of a missing element that people don't fully say is that, and I'm not suggesting this prosecutor is unfair, but that the prosecutor would not have been appointed by a Republican president, but for the fact that 2 Democratic senators passed on him. I mean, everyone's trying to inject politics into this.
Yeah, and you're right. The senators have enormous power in approving who is appointed to the U.S. attorney spot in their state. And I believe this is the same for this case. You have 2 Democratic senators who must have played a strong role in who would be the U.S. attorney there.
What's your client saying today about this?
Gary Shapley's a little bit somber. I mean, in one sense, there's some validation of what he's testified to, that there's been problems throughout this case, totally different from what he's experienced as a 14-year veteran at the IRS. So he's in some sense like glad that this could just have a light shined on it and that the right people could look at it and give their judgment. So I think it corroborates what Gary and Joe Ziegler, the other whistleblower, have been saying just 1 week ago at their congressional testimony.
All right, now going back to your experience, because you've done so many prosecutions, Credit Suisse, you've done a lot. I mean, you have an enormous experience on this. Have you ever seen a plea agreement like this before? Is anything that remotely seems like this?
No, nothing, no way. I can tell you, I just did a trial as a defense attorney in New Hampshire in federal district court. It was a tax trial. It was a one-count false return, $10,000 tax loss. I went to the prosecutors and said, hey, this is really conduct that the judge has already said there's going to be no jail time. Why can't we do a misdemeanor? And they said, no way, no way. It's got to be a felony. So there really is not equal treatment here, and I think that's a really good point to point out.
Mark Lytle, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.